here's the history. How can we now just predict future behavior?
This is Marco Peixeiro. He's currently a senior applied AI scientist and one of Udemy's top data science instructors. He's helped countless people break into data science and breaks down why it's one of the hottest roles in tech. If you're a student who's looking for a top-paying career and loves math, this is an episode you need to watch. Here's his career playbook.
I think data science came to be simply because we realized we have a lot of data. So companies, since they started, have been gathering data and not necessarily do something with it, or at least not do something to its fullest of its potential. Now that we have more compute being available, just on laptops, right? We can train models, run models now very easily on laptops. It just became very easy lately to do something useful now with large amounts of data.
What about you specifically? Could you tell us more about your path to entering in the data science field, what you've done so far in your career, how long you've been doing it?
In university, I studied chemical engineering with this idea that as a chemical engineer, I'm going to be working in renewable energies. So that was my romantic vision in a sense. And then turned out that all the jobs were in the oil industry. So big petroleum companies hiring, at least in Canada, right? Which is where I'm based. I would have to live in super remote areas. It turns out, wasn't what I was expecting it to be. So during my major, I started seeing articles about data science as the sexiest job now. So I was like, okay, let's take a look at it. And, that's when it was whoa, now I get to use math and science, in a sense, with programming, and I get to predict stuff. So that was just wow, this is amazing. I've always been a bit of a math nerd. So I was I'm going to focus on data science. So once again, self-studying, a lot of online courses, books. And then I got my first job as a data scientist, one of Canada's largest banks. And then transitioned again into applied AI science, or applied science, where now it's more there. I would say there's a heavier engineering component to it compared to what I was doing at the bank.
Well, data science has been somewhat of a new field. More and more companies outside of just tech are collecting a lot more information about their customers, about their products, and then they're able to apply a lot of the usefulness of data scientists and that field altogether to help direct and guide their businesses and make decisions. And so, what are you seeing there?
Yeah, so for sure, data science is still new. The reality of the job market is you're still going to see job postings saying data science, and it's going to vary a lot. Some of them will be, I guess, more analysis, where, you're going to make sense of the data. You're going to make, dashboards, just understand the history in a sense, but you're not going to do anything predictive. Other jobs is going to be again, more on the prediction side. So it's going to be, here's the history. How can we now, in a sense, forecast or just predict future behavior? And sometimes, they call data science, and turns out you're more of an engineer as well. And you're just making sure the data is there, is present, it is clean, and it is usable, right? So we still get a bit of that, although now I think it's much better. So, what I first described is more of a data analyst. For me, a data scientist is supposed to use the data in a predictive manner. So again, making sense of what happened, and with that, how can we anticipate something? And then the data engineer is the one who's going to get the data ready, get the data clean, and making sure, data flows correctly.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Could you share more about what your day-to-day kind of looks like and how data even is found and cleaned up and turned into a dashboard at the end for people to be able to derive insights from?
I'm going to describe more my previous job at the bank, which I think is more representative. So really the day-to-day was, we had the data prepared for us because the bank is large enough to have data engineers, essentially. So we were really focusing more on the modeling part, the analysis part, doing experiments. So trying out different models, measuring the impact of those models, selecting the best one. And then once, basically the best model in place, we knew the results, we knew, what we could expect as an impact on the product. If you are working, in a smaller company, you're likely going to have to do a bit of everything, right? You're going to have to go fetch your data yourself, clean it, making sure it works, and then do the modeling, do the analysis, and then figure out a way to put it into production. So yeah, not one is better than the other. So yeah, it just depends on what you want to do, basically.
I know you're mentioning a lot about data models. For someone that has no experience with what data models are or data science, what's the
Yeah.
easiest way to understand what that is?
It's a bit like, when we started learning functions in high school, right? So you will learn about the linear function, and then the quadratic function and the root square function, right? It's a bit like that. So, a linear function, is technically a machine learning model, as they call it, right? This is like the most basic model you can have. But basically, a model is just like you input data and you get some kind of an output, right? So take the quadratic function, right? The idea is I input a number and I get the number squared, right? That's the output. So same concept with the model. You're going to input data, and the data can be a lot of things. So
Got it. And I know earlier you mentioned a lot of different paths in data, whether you're a data analyst, data scientist, or data engineer. Could you tell
mhm.
us a little bit more about how you ended up in data science? Like, was that intentional or did you just fall into it?
No, it was intentional for sure. The modeling part was always interesting to me. And I think it was the most fun, right? Because the data engineer, I think there is less, I mean, there's just less science there. And what interested me was really like the scientific part. So the idea of you're running experiments, you're measuring, some kind of metric, you're trying to improve on it, and you're applying, mathematical concepts to, selecting the model for which scenario and for the kind of data that you have. So yeah, it was definitely on purpose. And that's what interested me in there. Data analysts and engineers, to me, there's just less science in it.
And how about with like more of the technical side? Because I feel like data science has a big technical component to it. Was that
Yeah.
something that you picked up early on, and were there like how did you go about refining your technical skill sets?
Yeah, so that was a lot of self-study for sure at the time, and I'm almost grateful because at the time there wasn't Chat GPT, there wasn't LLMs, right? So I was still reading books and trying stuff on my own and reading documentation, and I was still getting answers from Stack Overflow. So it was definitely longer, more painful, but I think it paid off. And even today, I still try to do it mostly by myself, but yeah, like definitely like try to still read books, to try stuff on your own. And as you learn, always try to build. That was something I've always done, even with websites. I wouldn't just like take a course. It's like, okay, I'm taking the course and I'm building a website. With data science, okay, I'm learning about the model and I'm trying to predict something, I'm trying to apply it on a new data set. And so always try to build. And yeah, and like stay away a little bit from the LLMs, just because yeah, they can really like increase your output, your productivity, right? You're going to be so much faster. But if you don't understand it, I think it's going to hurt in the long term for sure.
Got it. Well, if a student came to you today and said, "Hey, data science is my dream career," is there anything that you would warn them about that they might not understand about it with the public information online?
I would warn them that the fun part, in a sense, which is modeling, is about 20% of your work. I guess the boring part, in a sense, or like the part that, it's not necessarily why you chose this field, is going to be, first of all, convincing people that your model works, is going to be getting the data as well, depending on where you are, right? So, I was lucky. We had data engineers. So, like, it was fine. The data was there and cool. But, that's not the case everywhere. So, getting the data, cleaning the data, preparing the data. So, yeah, that's what I would say. And there's also the component of like presenting your results in a convincing manner. If you're more like, I don't know, introvert, then maybe that could be a downside. But yeah.
Gotcha. And on the topic of, or I guess with most jobs, people are curious about compensation, pay, and how that all works.
Yep.
If you don't mind sharing, like, what would a typical salary for data scientists coming out of undergrad typically look like, and
Mhm.
how does that develop over time as you progress through your career and at some of these large companies?
Yeah. Um, I can speak for the Canadian market, but when I started, and that was like 5 years ago, I started so entry level data scientist. It was 75,000 Canadian dollars. And then, I think in a matter of like 2 years, I was then in the six figures. And yeah, I mean, every move I've made in my careers, right, it was to increase. I would basically increase my salary. So yeah, so that was like a few years ago. I guess that now the entry level is probably closer to like the, I don't know, 85,000. The highly recommend an article. It says like how compensations in tech at least are tri-modal. So the idea is that if you work for a small local company, your salary is going to be more on the lower end. If you work for like a big but local company, the salary is going to be higher, but like towards the middle range. And if you work for a large global international company, then your salary is going to be more in the top range. So ultimately, I don't believe it's a question of skills, right? I think, you know, everybody can work at the top global company, right? So yeah, I mean, if compensation is something you're pursuing, right? Just keep that in mind. The bigger the company is, and the more international presence, the likely your salary is going to be much, much, much higher than what you can get with like a local company experience.
That makes sense. And on a lot of these headlines and news articles, I mean, people see like things like layoffs and like job stability comes to mind. Like for data
Mhm.
science, what's your take on the stability of the job today? And what is the outlook of that, in your opinion, if you go out 5, 10 years?
I think it's very stable, uh, simply because there's not a lot of people that can do it. And I don't think we are at the point yet where AI can do everything for us, right? Uh, even if you're even if you're day to day, you're going to be using AI, right? You still have to understand and you have to guide the AI. I think it's stable. I think the skills are you're going to have like some very good skills that can be useful in many types of industries, many types of companies. And also, I mean, I wouldn't worry too much about the news in general. Just like, you know, those headlines, they're meant to, give you some kind of an emotion, get a reaction out of it, right? In reality, most of the time, if you learn the right skills and also if you know how to market yourself in a way, so like, I would say don't learn in silence, learn, but learn publicly. So when you learn, write a blog, share an article, do a YouTube video, that's something that I've done. So, I've learned in public in a sense. That gets you seen by a bunch of people and you don't know what can happen from there. With that, I still get messages on LinkedIn of people like, hey, are you open for a job? We have this offer for you, et cetera, et cetera. And like, so even though if I'm not looking, I'm still getting opportunities, right?
Gotcha. I know you mentioned that you said data science is not something that everyone can do or can easily do. And there's probably a
Mhm.
very high technical bar to get there. And you're probably the best person to ask this because you publish so many different courses on Udemy. You have your YouTube channel. I see you writing on Medium.
Yep.
So for all like the students out there that want to become data scientists that are met with endless amount of decisions, like can you give them just a playbook on like these are the things you absolutely have to do to get your first data science job?
Sure. Yeah. Um, so first of all, for sure, learn how to code. Right now, Python is the de facto language you should learn. After that, learn your models. So, work with tools like scikit-learn. So, those are what I call the more traditional machine learning models. So just learned how to, get a data set, apply a model, get some kind of prediction, and also explain the prediction, learn how to optimize a certain model. So, it's not always like, okay, I'm gonna just shove a model and get an answer, right? You need to tune the model, make sure that it fits your data correctly. Because at the end, this is data science, right? And that's essentially the scientific process, right? So you're going to start with an experiment. You're going to get results. Not good enough. Do the experiment again, but change one thing at a time. How does that impact the final result, right? So like this is what you really have to learn and build a portfolio of projects. And if you have an industry in mind, so like, I don't know, you really want to go into banking, well, work with financial data. do something related to banking. So credit default, payments, accounts, balances, stuff like that, right? So try to find situations like that. And now with resources like Kaggle, you have access to a bunch of data set to do that. Okay.
One
Oh,
thing that I am curious about is on education. Like,
yep.
how important is it to go to college for data science? Or, yeah, if is college important? Is getting your master's important? Do we need a PhD? Like, how do you think about college and what should people be studying?
Yeah. Honestly, that's something I still struggle with in a sense. So basically, I just did my bachelor's, and technically in a field not related to data science, right? So I guess I took the hard way, meaning that I don't have a formal education in data science or anything related to AI or machine learning in a sense, and so I had to like prove myself in a sense with portfolio projects, with I guess a more public presence, with articles and courses and stuff like that. I think the easy way would definitely be getting a master's because I don't think there are bachelors for data science. PhD, I don't think is necessary. If you do a PhD, then you're probably going to do more like research at companies, which is, I mean, very lucrative, but you have to enjoy the research aspect and you have to enjoy, going very, very deep, into a problem. And that's not for everyone, right? So like, if you're more like me that, you did your bachelor's and you're just like sick of university, sick of school in a sense, yeah, I guess you can do it on the side like I did. Uh, don't be scared to invest some money in online courses, uh, in some resources just to like structure your learning a little bit more. And I think more and more companies now are getting more open to, to hire someone with not necessarily a like formal education in the field itself. Although, just expect to having to prove yourself a little bit more, right? With a project, with some kind of portfolio. So yeah.
Gotcha. And then Marco, last question we have for you is just any last advice for the students in the younger generation, or even to yourself when you were back in high school or when you were 18?
Yeah. I would just say, your choices aren't final, especially in fields like technology, programming, and everything. Like transitioning is easier than we think, and it is possible to do it either while you are studying or while you are working at a job already. You can transition. It's never too late to transition as well. And so, if you start a major and turns out, it's not for you or whatever, like just switch and it's okay. You're not going to be late. You're not going to be penalized about anything. I think you're just going to be making the right decision earlier, and it's just going to benefit, you're just going to benefit from it in the long term.
Gotcha. Well,
Yeah.
Marco, appreciate your time today. Before we wrap the episode up, where can people generally find you online? Any socials that we can share with them?
Yeah, sure. So on LinkedIn, yeah, which I guess, again, for your auditors is not the place yet to be, but yeah, I'm very active on LinkedIn. I am on YouTube. If you want to learn about data science or, if you want to learn about data science and learn, if it's something that you would like to do and work in, my YouTube videos can be helpful for that. And I'm also on Medium, where I write blog articles, and most of these blog articles again is going to be about what I learned, so all the process I took to learn data science and ultimately work in it. You're going to get a very nice history of what I went through to be able to land into this field. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, we'll leave all of that in the show notes below to everyone watching today's episode. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll catch you in the next episode.